Have you ever wondered why some men, despite all logic, chase the women who never truly let them in? The ones who remain just out of reach. The ones who listen in silence, who never beg, never break, never bend. The women whose eyes hold mysteries they never offer to explain. She doesn't ask for anything, and that, somehow, makes him want to give her everything. She lives behind a velvet wall of emotional detachment, not cruel, not cold, but sovereign. And this sovereignty unsettles him. It haunts the shadow of his ego. Men do not chase what is given too easily. They chase what mirrors the fragments of themselves they do not understand. And nothing reflects a man's inner chaos more ruthlessly than a woman who withholds emotional access. Not out of games, but out of depth. Distance, complexity. To the conscious mind, it seems illogical. Why pursue someone who resists intimacy? But the unconscious mind plays by older rules. In Carl Jung's world, this is the arena of projections. A man projects his own wounded anima, his inner feminine, onto the women he encounters. And when a woman stands before him emotionally self-contained, his inner world ignites with confusion, desire, and pursuit. Because what he's truly chasing is not her, but the missing, unclaimed parts of himself. This chase is not about romance. It is about recognition. Recognition of something ancient, buried, unresolved. He chases the emotionally unavailable woman, not because she withholds love, but because she activates a deeper truth. The boy inside him who was once ignored. The man who never fully integrated the feminine within himself. The man who equates unavailability with worth, who mistakes challenge for value, who believes that love must be earned through effort, longing, and the ache of uncertainty. The emotionally unavailable woman becomes the canvas for his inner wounds. She becomes the high priestess of his shadow, unknowingly initiating him into a confrontation with his own emptiness. Her silence is a mirror. Her calm is a crucible. And the more she withholds, the louder his inner hunger screams, not for her, but for wholeness. She is not cruel. She is simply self-contained. She does not crave rescue. She does not chase. She does not confuse chaos with connection. And this very balance, this disinterest in being consumed, disarms him. Because he cannot conquer her. And that, to the ego, is unbearable. In a world where men are conditioned to pursue, to win, to conquer, the woman who cannot be possessed becomes an obsession. She is the riddle that refuses to be solved, the flame that doesn't burn for him, the goddess who does not descend from the altar. Her detachment speaks in symbols. It whispers, "I don't need you to feel whole." And to a man still lost in his shadow, this is both terrifying and tantalizing, for he too longs to feel whole without possession. He too yearns for that kind of power, but the path to it requires him to see her not as a conquest, but as a reflection. Most women don't realize the power that exists in their emotional sovereignty. They think love must be loud, that presence must be proven, that availability equals value. But the deepest feminine power lies in energetic containment, not offering everything, not explaining, not softening to make others feel comfortable. The emotionally unavailable woman is not broken. She is often deeply healed. She's done the shadow work. She knows the game. And so she no longer plays. Her life is not a stage for a man's wounded ego to rehearse on. She does not perform. She simply is. And this essence, raw, unmoved, unbothered, is magnetic to the man who has yet to meet that version of himself. And so he chases, not her, but what she symbolizes: freedom, detachment, autonomy, mystery. The very things he was taught to fear or suppress in himself. She becomes an initiation. But the truth is, no one can complete that ritual for him. If he does not face his wounds, if he does not dive into the waters of his anima and reclaim the parts of himself he has abandoned, he will continue to chase emotionally unavailable women, each time hoping they will love him into wholeness. But she cannot give him what he has not claimed for himself. And until he learns that, she will remain the dream he cannot hold, the ache he cannot name, the ghost that lingers in every woman who comes after. To understand the roots of this pursuit, one must look deeper into the architecture of male psychology, into the patterns set in motion long before desire even has a name. When a man grows up in an environment where emotional intimacy is unpredictable or conditional, he learns to associate love with distance. He does not trust closeness. He does not trust stillness. What he trusts is tension. Tension becomes his compass. Familiar, unsettling, but dependable. The emotionally unavailable woman triggers that same emotional field. She embodies the very conditions he once survived. She may not intend to mimic his past, but her presence echoes the feeling. Her emotional unavailability reminds him of what he once had to chase and never fully receive. A mother's warmth that came in fragments, affection that felt like a reward for good behavior, love that was earned, not given. And so, without knowing it, he begins to chase. Not out of lust, but out of longing. Not out of confidence, but out of compulsion. She becomes the living reenactment of his unhealed emotional blueprint. Jung called this the complex, the emotional knots within the psyche that remain unresolved, that govern behavior like invisible gods. And in this case, it is the mother complex, or the anima complex, that governs him. She triggers the unresolved grief of never having felt fully received by the feminine. And the pain of that wound disguises itself as passion. You've seen it happen. A man uninterested in the kind woman, the open-hearted one, the emotionally available one who would actually see him. Because the soul doesn't always seek what heals it. It often seeks what is familiar. So when she pulls away, when she doesn't respond, when she doesn't orbit his world like a moon desperate for light, he becomes obsessed. He calls it love. But it's not love. It's a trauma echo. It's a dance between his ego and his unconscious. It is the deep ache of wanting to be chosen by the one who will never choose him. Because that ache is what he knows. And yet, paradoxically, he respects her. The emotionally unavailable woman commands reverence. Not because she plays hard to get, but because she is not available for the games at all. She no longer identifies with the wounded feminine who bends, who overgives, who tries to prove she is worthy of love. Her detachment is not armor, it is clarity. She is not closed, she is just complete. And this completeness disrupts him. You see, she does not validate him the way others do. She does not rush to respond to his every signal. She does not react, explain, or soothe his insecurities. She is emotionally sovereign, and her sovereignty highlights his emotional dependency. She is not cruel. She simply does not confuse availability with worth. She no longer dances for approval. And in her stillness, he is forced to confront his own chaos. He is drawn to her because she reveals what he lacks, not attention, not affection, but inner regulation, self-trust, the ability to sit with desire without acting out of desperation. She becomes his mirror, not of who he is, but of who he is not yet. And this reflection is both devastating and magnetic, because deep down, every man wants to feel whole, not from having her, but from becoming the version of himself that no longer needs her to complete him. The emotionally unavailable woman is often mistaken for being damaged, cold, or afraid of love. But in truth, many of these women are not broken. They are simply evolved. They have burned through the illusions. They have faced their shadows. They have learned that giving everything away does not prove love. It only empties the soul. And so, she holds her energy like sacred currency. She does not offer it to anyone who has not earned the right to hold it with care. Her detachment is not punishment. It is discernment. She knows what it costs to bleed for someone who hasn't even cleaned their own wounds, and she refuses to be that woman anymore. To the man still trapped in his shadow, this feels like rejection. But to the man ready to evolve, it becomes revelation. She may appear indifferent, distant, or untouchable, but beneath that surface lives a woman who has known what it feels like to be shattered by love. She has wept in silence. She has swallowed her own voice to keep someone else comfortable. She has played the role of savior, healer, muse, until one day she woke up and chose herself. Now her silence is not a void, it is a boundary. Her distance is not punishment, it is protection. Her stillness is not absence, it is presence turned inward. Men chase this kind of woman not because she is unknowable, but because she is ungraspable. And in a world that teaches men to define their worth by what they can win, possess, or conquer, she is the one thing he cannot pin down, and that haunts him. Her energy is no longer externalized. She no longer pleads, performs, or pours. She has reclaimed every ounce of her power from the hands of unready men. And when he senses that, when he feels the subtle shift, that her world will not collapse in his absence, he becomes restless. This is the shadow work he does not know he's walking into. He thought he was pursuing love, but what he's really encountering is his own inner exile, the parts of himself he rejected in childhood, buried in adolescence, denied in adulthood. The emotionally unavailable woman doesn't deny him affection. She denies him the illusion that love must be pursued to be real. And for the first time, he must sit with that discomfort. He may call her confusing, even cruel. He may label her distant or difficult. But in truth, she is simply a mirror that does not shatter beneath his projections. She reflects without distortion. She holds her ground like a mountain, unmoved, unchanging, vast. And that reflection is not easy to bear, because it says, "You cannot bend me into a shape that comforts your wounds." It says, "I will not abandon myself to secure your affection." It says, "I am not afraid of being alone, are you?" And this, to the wounded masculine, is terrifying, because he has mistaken possession for intimacy. He has mistaken reaction for connection. He has mistaken pursuit for passion. And now he stands before a woman who offers him none of these. A woman who does not lean in. A woman who remains silent when provoked. Who chooses peace over drama. Who refuses to beg, to explain, to chase. He doesn't know what to do with that kind of power. But still, he can't forget her. Even after he walks away, even after he distracts himself with someone more responsive, more validating, something about her lingers. The memory of her composure. The calm of her silence. The unapologetic way she occupied her own emotional space. He'll remember how he felt in her presence, not powerful, but transparent. She made him feel seen in a way that stripped the mask clean. And while his ego may have rebelled, his soul remembers. His soul remembers the fire of her boundaries, the softness she reserved only for herself, the way her detachment burned more than any screaming match ever could. Because real power doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't need to. Real power is silent. It's magnetic. It says, "I am not yours to possess, only yours to respect." And once a man encounters a woman like that, whether he can hold her or not, he's never quite the same. He has tasted something rare, something sovereign, something untouchable. And deep down, whether he admits it or not, he knows. He didn't lose her because she was cold. He lost her because she refused to abandon herself for him. He lost her because she finally loved herself more than she loved proving her worth. She doesn't haunt him because of what she said. She haunts him because of what she didn't say. Because she didn't plead for clarity. Because she didn't make a scene. Because she left with grace so heavy, it pressed on his chest for weeks afterward. Because she gave him the rarest silence of all. The kind that doesn't come from anger, but from emotional closure. You see, when a woman becomes unavailable not out of fear, but from depth, her absence carves a space inside a man's psyche. A space that he cannot fill with noise, with bodies, with validation. Her silence is surgical. It slices through his distractions. It echoes in rooms where his ego used to be fed. And there, in that vacuum, he is left with only himself and the truth she revealed in her leaving. Carl Jung believed that we are magnetically drawn to our shadows, not because we want to suffer, but because our unconscious desires wholeness more than it wants comfort. A man chases the emotionally unavailable woman because she is the living embodiment of what he disowns. She is control when he feels chaos. She is wholeness when he feels fragmented. She is self-respect where he harbors shame. She evokes not love, but a longing for integration. But not every man is ready to receive this lesson. Some recoil. Some try to dominate it. Others dismiss it altogether. But the ones who awaken, truly awaken, understand that this woman was never meant to be possessed. She was a teacher, a spiritual threshold. He may never hold her again, but if he's brave, he will remember her not with bitterness, but with reverence, because she showed him where he ends and where his soul begins. In the depth of her emotional restraint, she became a mirror to his dependency, to his avoidance, to the cracks in his masculinity that he covered with charm, ambition, or control. And that mirror did not flatter him. It undressed him. It told him, "You cannot love her in the way she deserves until you've become the man who can sit with his own silence." He will meet other women, women who mirror his energy, women who give easily, chase desperately, and overflow to fill the voids he doesn't want to name. But their warmth won't replace her absence because he isn't haunted by her presence. He is haunted by what she awakened in him. He is haunted by the version of himself she forced him to meet. She didn't ask him to change. She didn't offer ultimatums. She didn't give him a checklist of how to be better. She simply was. And that being confronted him more than any confrontation ever could. She didn't become emotionally unavailable as a weapon. She became that way because she stopped overgiving. She stopped waiting. She stopped leaking her power into situations that drained her. She reclaimed herself, not to be chased, but to be free. And it is this freedom that he both feared and desired, because the emotionally unavailable woman no longer seeks emotional survival in others. She has met her own shadows. She has walked through her own grief. She has learned that love cannot be traded for approval. And in that knowing, she becomes rare. She becomes sacred. She becomes unforgettable. For the man still governed by his ego, she will be labeled too much or too distant. For the man ready to evolve, she will be the turning point, the catalyst, the wound and the remedy, the question that lingers long after the story ends. You can always tell when a man has met this kind of woman. There's a shift, a slowness, a softness mixed with sorrow. He may not talk about her. He may not even admit she changed him, but something in him will never return to what it was before her. She was the flame that burned too bright to hold, the mystery that exposed his simplicity, the silence that taught him everything his noise had buried. There comes a time when even the most restless man begins to hear the call within, the quiet urge to turn inward, to stop chasing what flees and start facing what he's fled. And often that awakening is born from the woman he could never reach. The one who did not argue, who did not fight to be chosen, who simply slipped out of his orbit with a grace that said more than words ever could. She left him with silence. And that silence was not a punishment, it was an invitation. An invitation to become the man who no longer confuses intensity for love, who no longer needs resistance to feel alive, who no longer seeks in women what he has denied in himself. In the space she left behind, something deeper begins to stir. Not regret, but reckoning. He begins to see how his pursuit of her was never really about her. It was about control, about proving something to himself, about outrunning the ache of being unseen in his own life. But now, her emotional unavailability stands as a monument to his emotional immaturity. She showed him what it means to hold space for oneself, to not need to explain, to not seek closure, to not bleed for those who do not know how to hold. And though he may never speak her name aloud again, she remains the woman who required nothing, and in doing so, revealed everything. He will remember the weight of her stillness, the way her eyes didn't beg to be understood, the way she walked away, not because she didn't care, but because she cared for herself more. This is the paradox. The more whole a woman becomes, the more impossible she is to possess. And it is this impossibility that haunts the man who once measured his worth by how deeply someone needed him. You see, the emotionally unavailable woman doesn't reject love. She simply no longer confuses attachment for intimacy. She has peeled back the layers of her own psyche. She has stood alone in the wilderness of heartbreak, betrayal, abandonment, and she has rebuilt, not with walls, but with wisdom. She is not withholding. She is discerning. She no longer invests in potential. She waits for alignment. She no longer tries to prove her value. She embodies it. She no longer teaches grown men how to love. She lets their readiness reveal itself. This kind of woman is not here to rescue. She is not here to fix. She is here to be. And being in her presence is an energetic shift, one that demands emotional maturity, spiritual depth, and the ability to meet her in stillness without shrinking in the silence. To the man brave enough to do his shadow work, her absence becomes a threshold, a door, a moment of reckoning, not with her, but with himself. He must ask, why did I need her to be emotionally distant in order to feel desire? Why did I only long for what wouldn't surrender to me? Why did I equate unpredictability with depth? Why did her silence speak louder than my lover's praise? In these questions, there is pain, but there is also power, because from this place, he can finally begin the true work, not of chasing her, but of confronting himself, of learning to hold space for his own emotions, of dismantling the belief that love must be pursued, proved, or pried open. And the woman? She moves on, not bitter, not boastful, but whole. She no longer needs to be remembered, but she is, not because of what she gave, but because of what she refused to lose, herself. She was never his to possess. She was his mirror, his lesson, his edge, and that edge will stay with him. Because the truth is, some women do not leave scars. They leave echoes, echoes that awaken, echoes that transform, echoes that linger long after the story ends.